You're listening to the Masonic Light Podcast. Starring Pete Ruggieri, Larry Maris, and Jason Lewis. This podcast is not endorsed by any Grand Lodge, and the ridiculous ramblings of the hosts are their own. So sit back and enjoy some Masonic conversation without pretension. And now, here's your hosts, Pete, Larry, and Jason.
And Jack.
Hey, that's me.
Hey, and you're listening to episode number 46
of the Masonic Light Podcast.
That's usually your job, Pete.
Okay, that's it. We're all here. Hey, welcome everybody. Episode 46 Masonic Light Podcast. We're out of sorts because we already did our big interview that you're going to hear in 5 minutes.
With
Michelle Snyder.
Symbologist.
She's written like 100 books in symbology.
14.
It's close.
But who's counting?
Metric
It's
system.
not zero.
But before we get there, we have some breaking news, sad news. Brother Larry Maris.
He's got the ick.
He has got the ick. He is sitting on his couch. He can't be here this evening. But we have replaced him
What a shame.
with Justin Troop, who is our future Masons and Cars Getting Mac and Cheese host. Say hi, Justin.
What's going on?
There we go. So
That's all you hear from Justin
That's
tonight.
it.
Thank you very much.
It's
So-
nice to stop by.
So, Justin, what we usually do in the beginning is what have you done Masonically? Actually, we'll do a little more. How long have you been a Mason?
A little over 2 years.
And how's that working out for you?
I've loved every second of it so far. I can't complain.
Who was that idiot that was your first line signer?
You.
Some guy from Quarryville.
Yeah. And so, what do you have a job, right? What's your you have a you're not gainfully employed, but I mean saying,
Oh, my gosh.
what is your job in the lodge? You have an appointed position.
I am a pursuant.
That's nice. Good for you.
That's a PA, strictly PA thing, I believe.
Do you know how to spell that?
If I had a keyboard in front of me, yeah.
With spell check.
No, you know what? Google autocorrect and Word spell check can't fix that one.
Pursue event.
Vant.
Indeed.
So Pursuant Troop,
Yeah.
what have you done Masonically since our last Masonic Light broadcast about 2 weeks ago?
We had Grotto. That was a good time. I
Yay.
believe you were there for that.
I
We had a
was.
good
Thank you
time
for
and-
showing up for one.
After Grotto was better.
Yeah. Well, we
I
had
did not hear about After Grotto.
Well,
Thank you very much.
There's a before Grotto too. There's a cocktail hour before and after. Apparently,
I was there.
and we almost closed the bar.
So the after grotto was not planned,
Yes.
but apparently there was a
We talked about this on the last show.
it was still epic.
Oh.
There was a restaurant that had their Christmas party in February or January.
And I don't think there was anybody over 21 except for the Ubarians.
Apparently that didn't matter according to the state of Pennsylvania. I don't know.
I wasn't complaining one bit.
So Justin,
Yes, sir.
other than that, Masonically, do you have any Mason meetings, any kind of training? What have you had going on?
Well, I've just been doing the pursuant thing, doing the extra meetings and getting the guys through. I believe I owe you a petition for Grand Tall or Grand Cedars, and I think I've just been tucked into Royal Arch tonight by Jack.
Yes.
There we
he
go.
has.
Now, Royal Arch is the
What's Grand Cedars?
well. Now he misspoke.
Yeah,
Tall
I'm-
Cedars.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's the
But
American
he's
honey
not
speaking.
in it yet. He's not in it yet, so he doesn't know. but as far as the Royal Arch goes, and Jack, what is your title?
I am most excellent, and I am most excellent high priest.
Yeah, that really is the begin. At least I don't know how other states do it, but in Pennsylvania, that's where you get the real secret word, and that's to me that's where Freemasonry really starts. I don't know, solidifying. So I think it's cool. It's cool. So anything else you want
Just
to add?
don't get anything after Royal Arch. Just stop there. 'cause
Well,
it won't
you
be
can get in
perfect.
the. I'll be in charge
No,
of council.
shh, no, you
So-
can't hear that. No, stop.
I'm good right now.
Okay,
I'm just afraid I might get in trouble. But
Jack.
I've already got him in a chair. Don't worry.
Jack, anything else going on?
I happen to know that Justin owns a tuxedo, so he's like totally
Yep.
in. So no problem.
if you
Jack-
put a petition in my face, I'll probably sign it.
Bam.
Jack, what do you have going on Masonically the past couple of weeks?
I went to Masonic Week at in Arlington, and it was very interesting. We went down. I went down Thursday afternoon as part of Junto Council of AMD, and we conferred the St. Lawrence the Martyr degree.
So you and I both went down separately, and you and I had the same concern. The St. Lawrence of the Martyr degree, I don't think this is any kind of secret. One of the things you need in the degree is a gridiron. And we were concerned because the gridiron I got from a barbecue store.
It really looked like a giant fly swatter.
It's big. It's big. It was actually bigger than the Bible it's supposed to sit on. And we went out of our way and were very concerned.
Oh my God. I was all over Pennsylvania Dutch country trying to find a hand forged gridiron.
Because we were so scared that our brethren from England would like make fun of us.
And we love our brethren from England, the one of them that listens.
And when we got there,
Say it.
we saw the Royal Ark Mariner degree.
Do it.
And I think these guys were like called in like 5 minutes before.
The whole team, the whole degree team of the Royal Ark Mariner called in sick like 2 days before. Right.
So God bless the guys that did it.
Absolutely. They did a great job. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it. But the equipment that they used.
So like an example, a delta or a triangle for the profane, they used three butter knives taped together.
Scotch taped together. It was awesome. It was brilliant.
So Jack and I made eye contact. We're like, I guess our big gridiron's really probably not a big deal tonight.
Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, we were good.
But that was fun.
It was fun. It was my first visit to, I don't want to call it AMD week because it really wasn't AMD week. It was Masonic week.
Were you there for AMD Day?
I was there for AMD Day. Exactly. Which
AM.
was
D-Day.
Thursday, AM in the PM. So, wait, what? Anyway, we did the St. Lawrence the Martyr degree, which is a degree that's under the auspices of the Allied Masonic degrees. Pete was spectacular.
I was the exemplar.
As the exemplar. He was the candidate in the degrees.
I heard you recited your lines.
He was
flawlessly.
Pete did not miss a single solitary line.
Actually, Josh because Josh was concerned about missing something, so he didn't do the call and reply thing that we normally do. He just read it all, and I nodded.
And by
well,
read
he didn't
it,
read. He
by
memory,
read it,
memory.
he was reading it off the inside of his eyelids because he has really a photographic memory of this stuff. And it's funny. It's fun to watch Josh do a degree because you can see that he like rolls his eyes back in his head and he's reading the degree work.
He's visualizing
out
a piece
of his
paper.
brain. Yeah, he is. He absolutely is. And he's brilliant. He's one of a couple of guys that just knows how to memorize that stuff that way. And I just hate them all because I can't do
Right,
it.
and there's so many little things because as Pennsylvania Masons, we're used to saying things in a certain way.
Right.
So, I'm sure some ritual Nazi is going to yell at me, but like in one degree, if we say promise and declare, another one may be promise and swear, another one may be this and that. There's like, it's so easy to misspeak
Oh, yeah.
because it comes in every degree. It's just a touch different.
Right. But Josh has it all, and it's all somehow laser inscribed on the inside of his skull. And when you watch him confer a degree, he rolls his eyes back and he's actually reading it off the inside of his skull. I've convinced myself of this. But we love him, and he does great degree work. He's amazing. And there's a couple of guys like that in our chapter right now. And I really appreciate that they are good at it because I am not. I'm a craftsman, and I'm struggling to learn the work. So for me, I just see.
And
those
we
guys
also,
and I love it.
after all that was done, you and I got to hang out with some of the Masonic Roundtable guys.
Yes, the Masonic Roundtable guys are awesome guys, and we plug their podcast because we love what they do.
And they plug our podcast.
Because they make fun because we
They do.
suck.
No, hang on. I was they never plug our podcast.
No, they appreciate our podcast for not interfering with their podcast.
Right.
That's-
It shows the difference in intelligence. So they like us.
because we are no threat to them whatsoever. That's beautiful.
You know what I was really thrown off by? Jason Richards is very tall. Taller than I expected.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Is that a bromance thing?
No, not at all. I ended my bromance with Oscar, but I'll wait for my turn.
So Jason had a pink UGLE hat.
He did.
Jason Richards.
Yeah,
Jason Richards, yeah.
Jason Richards.
Jason Richards had a pink.
No. That hat came
It was
from
a square and compasses. It was a.
that hat came from Carl Hearn and Ascending Masters and Alter Ego.
Carl Horn was
clothing.
down there with Alter Ego clothing.
I got a shirt.
Very cool.
So for those of you that can remember names, that's where it came from.
Ascended Masters and Alter Ego clothing.
Okay, Carl, please send us a check. That'll be great.
$500.
So here's my big faux pas of the weekend, and I haven't told any of you this yet. So this is good juju.
What's Juju?
So,
Juju.
So about last year at Masonic Week, the guys from St. Thomas of Acon loved my scarves from MasonicScarves.com.
And of course they would.
And they ordered 50 custom scarves.
Wow.
Oh, they're the man.
And I got them in like a month later. I didn't charge them. I just paid it out of my, because I trust them as brothers. So I'm like, so should I mail these to you? Like, no, bring them to Masonic Week. Okay. So like a week or two before Masonic Week, I submitted my invoice and they paid it right away. Thank you guys. But I get down there at Masonic Week and I see Seth Anthony on the escalator and he goes, the St. Thomas of Acon guys are itching for their scarves. They're looking for you. And my eyes get as big as quarters because I just remember they're sitting in my bar.
Whoops.
This is at 4.
By bar, you mean right next to the door on the way out.
Yes.
Of your house.
Yeah, because I set them by the door so I wouldn't forget them.
Right.
So I'm okay. I'm freaking out. I'm like, no big deal. I'll come up with something. So one of my college friends is a meteorologist in Washington, D.C., and he's broke as heck. So I'm like, Matt, could you drive to Lancaster, Pennsylvania tonight? I will give you $100 plus gas money if you pick these scarves up. Oh. So my buddy Matt drove all the way up to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, got my scarves, drove them back. He met me at my hotel at 11:30 at night. I emailed the guy from St. Thomas of Acon, hey, I've got your scarves. I'll have them for you tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Reply comes back. We needed them today. We already left. Could you ship them? So then he gave me his address in Washington, D.C.
Oh my god.
So apparently I like stressed out over not like my screw up was already epically done. But so anyway, guys, it's in the mail.
Did they need them for like a specific thing they were doing that day?
Well, it was a gift. It was a gift from the head officer who was going to give them to all their members. So
this is how Pete goes from being 100 air
to zero.
To being a 0 air.
So yeah, I work like I think I worked like $100 profit in on that order, and I gave that all to my buddy from DC.
Oh my god.
And then today I had to ship them out. So I'm in the negative. So I need all my listeners to go buy a scarf at a high markup so I can cover that.
We're selling scarves tonight at twice the normal price.
So Jason, you came down the next day to do a degree.
And 2 days later, we came down to confer the Muscovites degree. This old Oddfellows degree we brought down. We were super loud and boisterous. We had the hotel staff, and they came over and told us all to be quiet because we were yelling through the hallways in our winky hats and big-ass axes.
Yeah, when you carry axes around in hotel lobbies, they get nervous.
And a big beefeater hat.
Yeah.
Well, we told our degree was being held like down a hallway. And me and the other guard with the axe, we stood at the hallway, and if you didn't have your Muscovites pinned, we crossed the axes and we wouldn't let you in. So here's all these like super duper accents I've never heard before, big wig Mason guys, and we're like, pin. And they say,
Comrade, pin.
and they say, what? We say, show us pin. And then they were like, we registered online with a pin. Show us pin. So that was kind of, we set the tone for the afternoon. But the Muscovites degree was great. We had 70 people in the room. Seth and a few other guys were already there for other Masonic events, and we came down in a party bus. One of our fellow Muscovites works for a transportation company, so we had the big party van, the big Sprinter, had mimosas on the way down. It was good.
What?
Yeah, so we came. So I got to tell you my Oscar Allen story, who's been a guest on our show. And Oscar, I really hope you're listening, which I'm sure you're not, because you have better things to do. You know, the joke has been that I have had a man crush on Oscar Allen, right?
You have a man crush on a lot of our fans that don't
They're not reciprocated.
Oscar and I just happened to be in the Valley of Wilmington when I got my 32nd degree, and he conferred the 19th degree, and that's kind of when, you know, the bromance started. Again, he doesn't have any idea who I was. So I'm standing at a vendor's table, right? We had like maybe 30 minutes before we had to do our degree to mingle, and I see Oscar coming down the elevator.
As if cascading over
Yes,
a
cascading
falls.
down. And I say, Oscar, come over here. And he comes over and he goes, I'm sorry. And I go, Jason Lewis from Masonic Light Podcast. You were on our show. Oh, very nice to meet you. Like, I'm the one that everybody jokes that has a bromance. Can we take a picture? And he goes, okay. So I quick give my camera to the royal inner guard, David LeBas. And he takes
He's
a
a
couple
royal.
pictures, and I look over at Oscar and I go, so what are you doing later? Wink, wink. And he goes, well, nice meeting you. Gotta go.
Now, because we're recording this so backwards, I don't know whether it made it to tape.
You know, what are you going to do?
Every interaction I've ever had with a listener, it's never started out with me. It's always been like, you're the guy from Masonic Light Podcast, aren't you? I'm like, who do we owe money to?
Much-
Like what do we do?
Much safer that
Now,
way.
I will say that Heather Calloway, she was great. She was in our degree. She enjoyed it. We took some pictures. Of course, the Masonic Roundtable guys, you know, Jason and John and Mike Hambrick especially, we've talked to back and forth virtually, but never in person. So hanging out with those guys is pretty cool. They were in the class. So, yeah, Masonic Week was pretty fun for a non-AMD guy. That was all right.
We need to
So far.
So we need to make, maybe next year, we need to get on the agenda for something for Masonic Light Podcast.
Why don't we just get a table?
Well, we can, but I mean, we need like an audience, a captive audience.
But speaking of something very serious, let's talk about our next guest.
Oh, Michelle Snyder.
Oh,
Wow. So, you know, Michelle falls in that category with a few of our guests that are way too educated and smart
Tabbert,
to be on the show.
Oscar,
So we are so lucky to have her.
Heather.
But not only is Michelle really smart, and she's so passionate about her topic, and it comes through, and she gets us excited about it. So she's a symbologist, and just thanks in advance for being on the show. And here's our interview with Michelle Snyder. Hey, everybody. We are here with our guest of episode 46, symbologist Michelle Snyder. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi.
So a little background. I met you at Masonic Con. Was that last year?
Yes.
Yes, last year at Masonic Con. And I was just enamored. I knew you knew so much. And I told Larry, who's not here today because Larry has the flu.
Larry's a big chicken. He was afraid of you.
And
ran away.
Larry kept dragging his feet because you know more than he does. And that offends him.
I'm offended that he's offended.
He has a very frail ego. So he's not here. We're not intimidated by a smart woman. So we're here we welcome you.
Yeah, yes.
Tell him I hope he gets over the flu. It's a horrible thing to have. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
So normally this is where Larry would read for 10 minutes your resume and not let you talk. But we're going to do things different than Larry. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in symbology?
Well, interested in symbology. Well, visual language is what symbology is. And I've been drawing since I was 2. And I taught art in schools and in my studio for about 40 years. And then in 2000, I was in a wheelchair. And I figured, sort of discovered that you really can't chase kids who have just discovered that erasers bounce when you're in a wheelchair, so that the thing wasn't going to work. So I had become very interested in the symbolism of the church and the biblical symbolism and Bible study symbolism. And I did a Bible study. It was really intriguing, called Art, Artists, and God. I wanted to know what the Bible had to say about the role of art and artists. And I found out cool things like, art was not something you hung in a museum or on a wall until about 500 years ago. Before that, everything that was made was art. You didn't have anything if it wasn't made by hand. You had all your quilts and blankets and dishes and jewelry. And then I wanted to know, okay, who decided how much Rachel was worth? They bought her with textiles and things. So I did that kind of a study. And then I really decided I was going to do my thesis on tracing symbols back. And I went through the University of Wales. I started my thesis when the Da Vinci Code came out. And that book influenced me only in one way, and that is that Robert Langdon was a symbologist, and then I realized there was such a thing. It must be that.
That's where it ended, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Dan Brown. So I worked on that, and the University of Wales is in the UK, and so I have a Master's of Philosophy, which is really higher than a Master of Arts here. So I was like halfway between. It was difficult. I had my colleague, Dr. Robert Duncan Ensman, who has translated Ice Age inscriptions, was the reason I could do my thesis, because we find out how far back the RX symbol goes, to 14,000 BC or even before, and it means medicine lady and her medicine, and it actually looks like the RX symbol. It comes up through the eye of Horus, and the eyes on the bow of the Greek ships, and all of this, they're all in the same, and it was just fascinating. So he worked with me, and we put my thesis together, and I graduated when the lost symbol came out. I did not plan it that way. It just happened. This makes a great story. So since then, I have written columns in newspapers, local newspapers. We were in California. I did some symbology seminars there. I taught art workshops where people would learn to design symbols for themselves, and that was a natural progression from teaching art and teaching visual language. And then I wrote a book, and there we have the rest of it. Now I have 14.
Wow. So you've already blown my mind, so thank you for that. The whole RX thing, and I'm just trying to wrap my arms around how you decipher something that's 14,000 years old. That's mind-boggling.
I can't do that.
But
things like the cuneiform, people think that the common belief, I think, is that it takes a team of people to translate that kind of a language. It doesn't. It takes one person. Dr. Ensman was born to an American mother in China, where she was a missionary, a nurse missionary, doing medical practice. And he was born just south of the Forbidden City, before there was even electricity there. And he's, he puts rockets in space. That's quite a progression in one life. But he reads and writes 15 languages, a lot of them are dead. But the fact is that Chinese is a pictorial language, unlike the phonetic language that we're used to. He's also a mathematician. He's also a cryptographer. I mean, this man's brain was just set to see the patterns in the Ice Age inscriptions that everybody else thinks are just scribbles and ritual art or whatever it was. And he would see the patterns, and he found them, and he found the same exact symbol pattern showing up thousands of times on thousands of images. And then he began to put it together. It's just one person's brain that is just the right one.
So symbolically speaking, the closest I come to actually appreciating symbols is the comics in the Sunday newspaper. So that's about my level of symbology. And I think I speak for most of the guys in Pennsylvania Masonry, and Pete alluded to this before we started recording, but we don't very often peel back the layers. We see the trowel as something that spreads the cement, and that's it. How
Why do it as that?
I beg your pardon?
So why do you in masonry? Why do you use the trowel as a symbol for what spreads the cement or the love of the brotherhood to keep it together? Why do you use that?
Because that's what we're told, and that's all we're told about it, and that's it. End of story. Go on to the next thing. So we don't in our world we don't dig deeper. So how can we as a group of men dig deeper? What do you see for us? Where's our future in that?
I think that I'm very careful to respect what I call the canon of symbology within Masonry. Context is very important. Your symbols are used for a specific reason. They're explained to you in ritual, and they mean what they mean. The symbols remind you of the ritual. And so in that way, they are a visual trigger for something that you need to remember and learn. But I read in my years I was researching Masonic symbols before Jay was even raised. So it's been a long time. But I remember reading that the way that they came up with the symbology for Freemasonry and the allegory and what symbols they used was they took the symbol, they took the tool, the trowel, for example, or the plumb, and they understood what it did in reality in the craft. A plumb tells you what? That something is
Vertical.
Exactly vertical.
Right.
Okay? So it made sense for them to use the plumb to symbolize the concept and the philosophy of living an upright life. They did this deliberately. The circumpunct is a dot within a circle. Yours has two lines. And I've gone over what this means outside of Masonry, but it still makes sense considering that that is a symbol for the analemma of the sun, which is restricted between Cancer and Capricorn in its path, which is repeated eternally. And so it is, the sun has to stay within its designated path. So why should not a human being have to circumscribe their life? And that's the symbol they used, was the one that is the symbol for the sun's analemma. Makes sense that they have taken those symbols and applied them to a philosophy to help you understand, to remember, and to ingest the philosophy, because symbols are a shortcut for thought. They go right to your brain. The images, and especially archetypal images, they bypass the logical word patterns we use when we listen to words or read or speak. And they work directly on your associative processes in your brain. When you see symbols, you associate the images with things, and it happens a lot quicker than you could explain it in words. This is part of why symbols are so powerful.
Was that at a time in Freemasonry when it officially was founded in 1717? Was that just an easier way to teach people? That maybe
I believe, I can't say what they were thinking then, but it is an easier way. You have a trigger. You've got a visual trigger, like the tracing board. The symbols should remind you of the ritual that applies to the tracing board. It helps you remember the lessons. I believe that they understood that.
And they
it's a memory trigger.
They also had a thorough understanding of the Christian Bible at the time. So they went back to the stories that were in it that reflected on those things, and they pulled them back out again. Whether it was the New Testament or the Old Testament, they knew it. They knew it in Greek and they knew it in Hebrew. So when they created our work, that's kind of where they drew those symbols from. The
same thing. Star. I always wondered why the 5 star points were represented by women from the Bible. I said, well, why that? And my colleague Bob Ensman said to me, well, what other names are they going to use? People know those names. Those stories are known. And even though those stories and the people could be allegorical or symbolic for something, they are well known. And you need to have something that is, that has already...
an archetype.
It's already got archetypes already known.
Right. I was reading today that where we look at the point within the circle, and we're taught that it represents the two St. Johns who are vastly different personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier on, it meant, I think it was Solomon and Moses, because Solomon was the judge and the law, and Moses was more of like the teacher. And
Right.
it's fascinating, especially even within Freemasonry, how things change, but stay the same, but the meaning is the same.
It is very interesting about the two saints, John, because the lines that are beside the circumpunct, right? They're up and down. If you put them up and down, one is Cancer and the other is Capricorn.
Right.
And the two Saints Johns represent those extremes as well. So it doesn't matter really what you call or what you label the parts of the symbol. The symbol itself. Why am I getting a message in my computer? Did you hear that ding-a-ling?
We did.
That's okay.
It sounded very
right.
pleasant, though.
That's usually where we yell at Larry, but we'll be nice.
I made it go away.
Just blame
So-
Larry.
So the fact is that symbol just translates into what the philosophy is that they're trying to help you remember. And that's true, I think. Symbols are, especially the ones in Freemasonry, they're like a mnemonic. And they're for memory. And they used good ones. And that was a science that they had. The science of teaching with symbols and allegory is powerful. And one of the reasons is because in order to understand, you got to understand perception. The brain is like a mirror. When you look in a mirror, you can see what's there, right? It's reflecting off of the real thing, and you can see it. But when you go over to the glass and touch the mirror, there's nothing there.
Right.
It's a virtual image. Well, your brain is the same. Your eyes, they receive reflected light because we only see things because of light and dark. So your brain interprets the light that is being reflected through your eyes, and it creates a virtual reality in your brain of what you are seeing. And that virtual reality is interpreted by you and every person individually. And that we are all different because we've all got different genetics. We've all been born and raised in different places. We have different experiences with which we associate the things that we see. And so
I teach the candidates at my lodge as they're coming through, and I tell them that we teach these things in symbols because we all see the symbols through the prism of our own experience.
that is true.
And everybody sees them differently because of that.
And that is absolutely true, because the reason a symbology, let's go back to the beginning here. A symbology. What is a symbol? A symbol is an abstraction of a concept or an idea or a thing. Basically, it's an abstraction. Mm-hmm. A symbology is a system of communication. So you're born into a culture, and it takes you forever to learn to read and write the symbology. And it's important. Humans make up language. We create language. We have the power to create language, and we have to, because that is how we communicate our dreams and ideas and our views of reality to other people. And we also create knowledge, and we need that language and that symbology in order to share that knowledge. Now, we agree on what things mean. You look at a tree, and you see the tree, you think the word tree, you see the word tree, and you think of a tree. But if you went to China, that would not be a tree. We have to agree on what those things mean, which is why symbols in context is very important. If you are a brother and you're looking at a Masonic symbol, the brethren agree on what that means. Now, you might go to India, and that same picture will not mean the same thing there. All the symbols that we have roots in ancient civilization, mostly to prehistory. But they also have layers. They collect layers as cultures use them. And the layers of meaning, for example, it's a sad story, but the swastika is 30 to 40,000 years old.
Right.
In some places of the world, it means health and wealth and prosperity and all things that are good. And then one year, it gets used by a culture that put a very negative meaning on it.
Right.
And so people have a hard time looking past that layer to see what the other layers really are. And so we have to do that with all symbols.
I'm not sure if you know the guy or you've seen his work. Who was I looking up today? gentleman by the name of William Kirk McNulty from Indiana. He did a bunch of videos on YouTube about symbology and Freemasonry, and he obviously couldn't go into detail because it was recorded years ago. So I couldn't ask him questions, but he was talking about how Freemasonry officially began at the end of in the Renaissance, and how did like the Renaissance impact the symbols that we use? Just there's so many things that came out of the Renaissance period that just kind of monopolized our thought in the Western world.
And we know that you know what those symbols are.
But Renaissance is so recent. Take me back 10,000 years.
Oh, yes. Go there, please.
6,000 BC, where the megalithic mariners discovered the Venus clock. And because they were studying the stars and astronomy, they had to create geometry. 6,000 BC, we have them naming the days of the earth, the days of the week, based on the planets, which included at that point the sun and the moon that they understood. And they understood the math. They understood the apparent speed through the sky. They measured the circumference of the earth. 6,000 BC had more impact on us than any Renaissance. But I will answer the question.
By the way, Jack now has a huge crush on you.
Oh, gosh. Oh, I just so want to just have a cup of coffee. Yes.
The Renaissance is such a romantic period of time. Of course, everyone loves it. And that's when, the artists of the day, they figured out how to draw perspective so that they weren't just stacking objects up. And Da Vinci was amazing. He had a great impact on a lot of things that didn't even really manifest the impact for maybe even centuries. But the Renaissance also, I think it romanticized a lot of things. Archetypes, however, are symbols which represent experiences and sights common to all of humanity, like a mother and child. There's been mother and children since there's been the first mother with a child. Every human being has seen a mother and child. So it doesn't matter what culture or language that they speak. You show them a mother and child, it's a powerful archetype. That is why it's used so effectively in religion. The other thing that everyone has seen is the sun and the moon, unless you live in a cave or under the ocean, in which case then you haven't. But I don't know any people that live down there. So the sun and the moon also are archetypes because of that. And then there's, you could get into the Jungian thing, but in the Renaissance...
Yeah, we'll stay away from Jung. That's fine.
Those archetypes were powerfully used. Fine artists would paint things that would have been, had the church known what they meant, not allowed. And they came up with an entire symbology of their own, a pictorial language where they painted things about alchemy, and they painted things about that would have been considered heresy then, and into fine art pieces. They made them, they turned them and they painted amulets for famous people who could afford them. Paintings that were an amulet and hang on your wall or hang in your room. The church never really understood that, and that code or that symbol system was passed down from like an underground stream that you can associate with alchemy, from master to disciple. Mm-hmm. To learn, like, for example, if you see a painting that has 3 golden arrows, that is a symbol for enlightenment, which was not allowed by the church. The same thing.
Why 3 golden arrows?
3 golden arrows. I don't know why, it just is. And then there's 3 little red flowers. If they're specific and alone, that also was a symbol for enlightenment. So that takes me to the number 3. They must have had some idea from Pythagoras and sacred geometry that the number 3 was a sacred number. Speaking of Pythagoras, he understood that the universe is made on pattern and number. Mm-hmm. Geometry. Sacred geometry. And one of the things that I really love about Masonic symbolism and the Masonic, the whole Masonic allegory and symbology is that they encourage the 7 classic subjects, including astronomy and geometry. It's all over the lodge. Everything is set up astronomically. And when you study astronomy, you need geometry. Those two things go together. And when you can be encouraged, as for example, through the Masonic system, to learn more about geometry and learn more about sacred geometry and learn to see it, learn to see the patterns that are there, the patterns on which creation is made, you can catch a glimpse of the divine.
I think we all need to like wrap our heads in a bandage right now and recover a little bit from this. So I think we should take a break so that the people.
We're not really going anywhere, but
we're not going anywhere. We're still going to keep talking, but the rest of these people can just.
They're going to hear a commercial.
Yeah. Mazel tov. All right.
Good news, everyone!
Masonic Light News. News not fit to print.
In Masonic news today, York Rite Masons from around the world gathered this week in Arlington, Virginia, for a nearly week-long assembly of increasingly exalted degrees. It looks like a collection of Swiss Army generals with all them medals they're wearing, said Rodney Lapel of the Grand Lodge of Ohio. Another brother was heard to say, "There's so much bling for sale in the lobby. I'm going to need a bucket to take it all home." Degrees of every kind were offered to willing attendees who had their wallets open and their fill of masonry for a single weekend. Arcs, friars, corks, and even a barbecued monk were held up as examples of Masonic principles. Reports of a bear sent all the way from Tsarist Russia continue to pour in. The only question left unanswered at the end of Masonic Week was, how can I hide the next credit card statement? And that's the Masonic news. So what it was.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to our conversation with Michelle Snyder, symbologist, author of Symbology, Decoding Classic Images and Decoding Symbols Through History, and several other books which you can find on Amazon, but we'll let you talk about that later. But I don't want to interrupt Michelle or Jack, so
I'll just jump in then.
Oh, okay.
That's
So,
neat.
Michelle, one of my big, kind of like I don't know, I have a lot of pet peeves, but
Oh, God, yes.
so there's some of us that everybody loves Freemasonry for other different reasons. And there's some people that think that Freemasonry is the beginning and the beginning of all esotericism and symbology. And I'm not smart enough to tell them they're wrong, so I just tell them they're wrong. They're like, but there was, symbology and esotericism has been around for, as you say, for centuries.
Yes.
Freemasonry does not have does not own that. I mean,
No.
it was, we're just the one little fraternity that kind of called on and stuck around. Are there some other big groups that were really big in it?
I have to go way back because symbolism is a natural function.
Right. Cave
I mean,
walls.
hey, that's
Something you learn at a very young age.
symbolic communication that tells your life, tells nature what you're going to be. Symbolism is at the very base of life. And symbols we use symbols to communicate. I mean, we're not the only ones that use symbols to communicate. Cats will scratch on a tree to say, that's mine, and don't cross that line, okay? Or you're in big trouble, or they leave their scent somewhere. It's a natural process to do.
Pete leaves his sense.
Esotericism is That's a huge subject, and we cannot confine it to the beginning of Freemasonry. You just can't.
So is there a difference between esotericism and, if that's a word, I think Pete made it up, but that's okay. Between that and symbology, I mean, is there a difference, or is it semantic?
Symbology has two definitions I explained. One is it's a system of communication. We have an English symbology. There's a Chinese symbology. So
Okay.
yes, it's a system of symbols. Okay, but symbology is what I do, is the comparative study of symbols. So it's also a verb. But esoteric systems need to be taught. It's a symbol system that you either need the key to understand or you need to have a mentor. It's an oral tradition teaching. Now, occult is different. Occult just means hidden. It's an astronomical term. And occult symbology, an occult symbol system can be learned with a lot of study. It's easier with a teacher, but it can be found. Things that are hidden can be found. Esoteric is a system for which you need a mentor, and that is not a new thing. And so what was the other half of that question?
Yeah, I forget. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, from my limited knowledge,
I just like listening to you talk. That's all.
From my limited knowledge from my state college, my state institution, esoteric is the private, secret, confidential. It's intended to be revealed only to initiates of a group, that
is true. You can apply it that way, but it is not. It is not limited to Freemasonry. And Freemasons, esoteric systems were around long before Masons.
Oh, the Book of the Dead, and yeah.
My head, but I will say that you're right. But when somebody says something to me like that, and they want you to agree with them, I can say I can agree with you, but then you both be wrong. So I can see it that way.
Well, but the opposite would be exoteric, and that's what you see is what it means.
Ooh, vocab.
The little symbols we have on the bathrooms, you and your toilet, that's exoteric. Everybody has to understand it.
Right, okay. Well, that got kind of a little confusing the past couple of years. Well, no, because they said you can go to any bathroom you want. So.
Sure, that's what they said.
I think they ought to have, men, women, and question mark. I think that would be much more appropriate. Come on.
All right, you're in.
I just feel bad for the poor disabled folks because they get lumped into the. All right, you and everybody can use this one.
Yeah.
Like
it's a bathroom. Shut the door, lock it, and have fun.
Thank you.
Rip it up.
It's not political.
And that is the symbology, the you and your toilet signs.
So there's esoteric and there's
exoteric.
occult, and then there's symbolic. And symbolic is proto-human, even probably,
Sure.
right?
Well, symbolic is like the umbrella for everything that is imaged. It is an amoeba. It's a paramecium. A paramecium. It has an eye and like 250,000 little centrioles that go from the eye to the brain. It has a brain. And it has to symbolize in its brain. It has to know what its food is and whether or not it can eat the food. And, a paramecium, it doesn't, look, let's get complicated and go really sciencey, okay? There are state spaces and there are information spaces. A state space is a thing, just anything, a desk, that's a state space. It is something that exists. An information space is a state space with information in it. Like the brain, like a blade of grass. It knows when it's going to grow, and then after it's done growing, it dies.
Okay.
I would posit that your computer is now an information space.
Ooh.
Information spaces are how life progresses and how it exists. Why is it that one of us has blue eyes and one of us has green eyes? The information space that developed you as a human being was told that a bird. I always ask, how does a bird know how to build a nest? They don't go to school. How do they know that? Because they have symbols in their brain which tell them what it's supposed to look like and direct them to do it. You have a pH balance in your system, the acidic balance of your system. And when your system goes off a minor amount of the pH, it can go back to where it's supposed to be. But my question was, how does it know where it's supposed to be once it's not there anymore?
Pete is very familiar with this. He has to go to UPenn every now and then.
Yeah, I passed out in Rome because of that.
See, well, you were a little over the edge, and your body needed some help. But your body knows. There are symbols in your biological structure which tell it how to function. So symbols and symbology is. But
those aren't cognitive symbols, right? Those aren't things that you, whether there's awareness or not. Those are things that you're. I don't know that you think about. That you think about. I'm sorry, it's been a long day.
What's the question?
Symbol. Yeah, there's not a question really. It's more of a statement. Symbols have to be considered, right? You're saying that they're reacted to subliminally, and I don't disagree absolutely. And I would never disagree with you because you've got like degrees and stuff. But
it makes a good conversation.
But the symbols are something that are reacted to biochemically. Right? Is that that's kind of what you're saying?
Well, sometimes. It depends on their context. In your body, yes, your DNA instructs your body how it's to be. But, when we draw a symbol to communicate something to somebody.
Then that's intellectual.
Yeah.
Right.
So it depends on. That's why context is so important. You can't just take a German word and put it in anybody's book. It won't make any sense.
Oh, come on. But I want to.
Take a picture, you take an image, and you see it throughout history, but when and where in history that it has been used will tell you more about what that symbol means at that point in time than just the use of the symbol. Context is really important. In some cultures, white cats are bad luck. I think they have it backwards, but who am I?
Well, cats in general, but that's just me.
Well, that's just you. Mine is white.
So Michelle,
I can't even consider the fact that she's bad luck. It just wouldn't sit well with me at all.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jason.
So switch gears just a little bit. Let's say that you had a handful of not symbologists in front of you, such as ourselves. What is a good symbology and symbologist starter kit? I mean, obviously you've written a number of books, but for a novice, where's a good place to start? And this is where you can plug your own book.
Well, I was going to say I could recommend a that I read, but no, I think I'll use mine if you don't.
Atta girl.
I think I've been selling a pair of books. I went down to the Grand Lodge of New Jersey, and I did a new seminar called Symbology, Leadership, and Power. It was that book is coming out later in the spring. But the brethren there really liked Hidden in Plain Sight and Revision. Revision will take you through symbology in terms of what it is, how it's done, context, archetypes. It has all of the basic information there on what that means. And then there's a couple of articles in the back, like Busting the Caveman Myth. It also introduces you to some simple Ice Age language translations. It's very important that we break the paradigm that our ancestors were grunting, illiterate big brutes dragging women by the hair into their cave.
Well, mine maybe, but not most.
What makes them think it was just the men? Maybe the women did. I don't know. Anyway, you can't live in a cave because when it's 70 below zero for months, you are going to have to seal up your cave and light a fire, which means you die of carbon monoxide poisoning, or you can't seal up your cave and you freeze to death. So there are some things in there that are really important about breaking that paradigm of what we think our ancestors were like. They lived through centuries, millennia, thousands of years of 100 below temperatures in the winter. I do not know if we could do that even with our technology. They had among them some absolutely brilliant people.
So my wife could not do it for more than a day. That would be it.
Right.
Camping for her is at the Marriott. So.
So the basics of the Ice Age language and the basics of how I do symbology, what it means, archetypes, that's all in revision. And in the back, I actually decode some classic images. It is decoding classic images on steroids. That's the revised edition of the first book.
That's hidden in plain sight?
Well, that's revision.
That's revision.
Hidden
Okay.
in plain sight is a little bit different, and anybody who's really interested in esoteric material would probably like it. It's got chapters on alchemy, sun gods, the green man, heraldry, the tarot, and they're organized. The material is organized in chapters like that, which is cool. You can just open it to a chapter of a subject that interests you. You can read about archetypes or whatever. So those two, I think, would be a good place to start.
Fantastic.
Have you considered, just because we're such a rabid audience, no, I mean Freemasonry in general. Like, there is a new generation of Freemasons that, well, actually, all the four of us in this room, we joined and we did not find what we were looking for.
Which was what you're talking about.
So we are seeking it out. And so as an example, Justin, you haven't heard Justin too much. Justin and I had a very well-produced comedy show podcast, and nobody listened to us. Wow. Absolutely nobody.
Well,
The
we
production,
promise you it
the
was
production
funny.
was great.
So on a whim, we decided, let's just do this Masonic thing. And like a few weeks later, we have thousands of fans in countries.
Wait a minute, Larry. Thousands, really? Come on.
It's because, I mean, so if you were to write a book specifically on Masonic symbolism, it might get you a payday. I'm just saying, like, because they are just ravenous.
I'm not a Mason.
You don't have to be.
Well,
If you lived in Washington, D.C., you could be.
I know, I understand that. So Jay is actually writing a book on this subject for Masons.
Jay is right.
summer.
Jay is writing that. Jay, in air quotes, you're seeing that. Yes.
We want Michelle.
We want
Yeah.
Michelle. We want Michelle.
I will be writing a book on Eastern Star symbolism.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Are you an Eastern Star?
To read, I could do that, I suppose. Although my approach to Masonic symbols are that you can't separate the image from its history. It has a new meaning, perhaps a revised meaning or a new application in the context of Freemasonry, but it brings with it all the power of its own history. And if you can wrap your head around that, if you can find that history, it will give your symbols so much more meaning and depth. And you will have revelations as to why those symbols were used. They did not mean to separate the symbol they're using from its history. I know that because I've looked at them. There's just no way. They understood it when they came up with this system. And to me, Freemasonry is responsible for preserving and teaching the information that I find when I go into prehistory and look at the civilization that was there. The fact is that they were building astronomical observatories, 6,000, 10,000 BC. The Sphinx, the Great Sphinx, built in 9,000 BC, had two poles in front of its great paws that they used to time one star from reaching one pole to the other pole. It was an observatory. And before it was an observatory, probably 15,000 BC, it was a sundial. It's made out of a yard dung, which is a single outcropping of stone. It's the biggest single stone sculpture in the world. And before they used it for a sundial, they just used it as a menhir because they could see the sun passing. It's facing east. The megaliths that dot our planet were deliberate. They are astronomical observatories, and the symbols that we have go all the way back. It's just astounding.
So
They had them. Go ahead.
Michelle, we just really wish that you would be a little more passionate about your craft. Okay, I'm sorry.
I just wish we were a little smarter.
I might self-combust here, you know.
Well, it's nice because I have a graphic design background, so I can really appreciate where this is coming from. When you distill like the graphic design definition down, it's effective communication with text, images, and symbols, and this is basically what we're kind of discussing here is a lot with with the symbology. I really appreciate it.
Well, so Jason's Lodge is having a big event coming up.
Yep, March
and
3rd.
And if it is a success, I'm sure they're going to redo it every year.
No, I claim her.
We the March 3rd event, we would like to do one in the fall, so perhaps we'll talk offline.
Yeah, just you have my email address, and I will bring you leadership and power. I was the only female in 300 brethren. I took enormous advantage of this situation. But it's a new presentation. I covered things like the crown and the scepter and the gavel and the rod and the cord. Oh. And I covered the concepts of leadership and power, which are very interesting. So, and plus I always teach perception and how that works because it makes a difference. People have got to understand that you can show somebody the same picture and it's not going to mean the same thing exactly to each person, but it does mean the same thing in general. And that's why these things last. You can pull these kinds of symbols out of mythology and folklore and fairy tales. It's symbolism. It can be a picture or a letter or a musical note. It can be a scent. It can be words that make a description of something. The letters that we use to write are symbols. We can't communicate without them. The words we speak are symbols for whatever it is that we're speaking about. I say lodge, and you guys have something in your head. Okay? That's a symbol, that word.
Right.
And so that's what it takes to communicate. It's an enormous subject.
I think we have some homework because, I was just looking at Jack, and we have you as such a wealth of knowledge. I feel like we need to come up with a specific topic that we need to bug you on at another time.
Okay.
And discuss one thing, because we could really hammer down on any little thing we want in the lodge. And I'm sure you could help us figure it out.
Okay.
Symbologist on call.
Symbologist on call.
Do you take a retainer?
I would consider it, but you can always email me.
Michelle, we thank you so much for coming here tonight. This is just it's picked a scab that I've been nursing for many years, and
I don't know that I've ever been associated with picking a scab, but okay.
Not that you yourself are a scab, but that there is a scab. There is a scar on my masonry that's related to this exact topic. So, we so appreciate your coming here to be with us this week. So.
It's an honor to be on your show. You guys are great.
No, you should not be honored to be on this show.
We thank you.
This is so wrong. We thank you.
If we had a budget, we'd pay you. But obviously, if you see my basement, you realize we don't have a budget.
We accidentally asked an academic on the show.
Really, it's important. I want people to have an aha moment when they either read my book or listen to me, or many of them. And I think each person is very close to being able to just catch a glimpse of what divine really means. Do you know that the word divine comes from the word divide? And the word divide came into being when they made geometry from studying astronomy about 6000 BC. So there you have another little...
No, you have to stop now. Stop. You're killing me.
Stop. I appreciate it.
My head is exploding.
See, I thought divine was from that John, what's his name, movies from Baltimore.
Yeah, there is that divine.
That's different.
That's a different divine.
Oh.
Okay.
But, Michelle, you need to give yourself a plug. Where can our listeners find more out about you and about your books and all that good stuff?
Okay, the website is whiteknightstudio.com, and that is Knigget. White, K-N-I-G.
Nice.
Is that like Monty Python Knigget?
Yes, that is a Monty Python plug. Okay, so
Very nice.
My blog is there. There's a connection there. You can see the Ensman Starship. This is the man that I worked with, and Ice Age Languages. All the tabs are there. I write articles on that blog. So you can go in there and maybe find an article of interest. I also have a Symbologist page on Facebook, Michelle Snyder, Symbologist. And it's whiteknightstudio.com, and that will take you, the books are on Amazon. It'll show you the books that I have, etc.
Well, we thank you for coming, Michelle. Thank you again.
And this is how much we like you. These are all the questions from Larry that we did not ask.
You could have asked them.
No, we could not.
No, because
they were all Larry, and what he knows.
Each page is one question.
Oh.
Do you know how many pee breaks that would have been?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Just, make them contact them a little and ask me next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back. Thank you very much, Michelle Snyder.
I need an aspirin.
Hey, Dee, this is Larry calling in sick, next to dying, but not really. Just calling to let you guys know that I'll be anticipating hearing the show next Monday. And also, too, to give you some advice, don't screw things up. That's all.
And yeah, you just heard Larry Maris calling in from his deathbed.
Thanks, Larry. We love you, baby.
Don't come back.
Yeah. Jason's getting really comfortable, or Justin's getting really comfortable in your chair over there.
Justin looks good in your chair.
For all those who are sick and tired of hearing Larry Maris take piss breaks every 14 seconds, you're welcome that I'm here.
Justin.
Do you know every episode we get somebody who calls in that says,
you guys are picking
or
on Larry.
writes in like, don't
stop
quit age abuse.
Nobody ever calls Larry.
Who is the one? Who is the one? It's Larry, actually.
It's Carol.
You know what? Jeff Moyer did go pretty hard though. The one episode.
Yeah, that's why Jeff's not on the episode this week, because
Jeff, you need a timeout.
Jason, what do you have coming up the next 2 weeks?
Well, by the time you hear this, my stated meeting would have happened. So I don't really have. I just got admin stuff, Scottish Rite stuff, and some computer stuff that I do for the district, but nothing really that important.
Jack, you've got some stuff coming up. I know you have Royal Arch next week.
I got some stuff coming up. What?
You have Royal Arch next week.
Yes. By the time this airs, Royal Arch will have happened. We will have conferred another Mark Master Mason degree.
I like the Mark Mattern degree.
The Mark Mattern degree, exactly. We will have also, actually, Tuesday is stated meeting at Lodge tomorrow. We actually released this a week later, so it's already happened. Don't come for dinner. It's not going to happen. But Royal Arch will have also happened on Thursday, and that's the Mark degree. Everybody's leaning into their microphones like they have something snarky to say. Go ahead, do it.
No, I wanted to steal your thunder. I forgot that I wanted to mention that at Lodge 43 at 213 West Chestnut in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 17603, Lodge 43 will be having its Lodge 43 Presents lecture series with Christopher Rodkey, who was a guest on this show, episode 3, 4, 5, 6, something around there, in the early days. And also we have Pete's dog chewing on ice. But we will have Jason Richards and John Ruark coming to Lancaster.
That's Lancaster to you foreigners.
To Lancaster. To talk about some very interesting topics. You can go to lodge43presents.eventbrite.com. This will probably be the last time you hear about it on this show. So if you want to see some Masonic Roundtable guys in real life, come to Lancaster. And it would have already aired, but I also have been a guest on the Masonic Roundtable with Seth Anthony talking about Muscovites. So if you want to go back and listen to the Masonic Roundtable episode number 202, I believe, we'll be there.
Jack,
can I finish?
Yeah, go ahead,
you
Jack.
You can, but I want to say, could you mention when you chronologically get to it, we're doing an in-gathering for AMD at Ephrata Lodge.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I'm Googling that on my phone right now as we speak. Junto Council number 537 of the Allied Masonic Degrees of Pennsylvania will be holding its inaugural, not first annual, but inaugural in-gathering, where we will have speakers and educated people who will be talking about
Things.
things of educational merit.
Stuff.
Academic stuff.
Academically.
But they're like smart people.
Academics.
They
And they
say
are.
the big words.
So if you're interested in such academical
And
things.
you are an AMD.
Oh my God, you're making
Brother.
this so hard.
I'm in that AMD council.
And yeah, spell check. So anyway, if you go to Junto Council 537, you'll find the Allied Masonic degrees, and there's a link there to an Eventbrite that you can buy tickets for lunch, speakers, some conversation. If you're a member of AMD, you can stay in the afternoon for some additional degree work and some conversation about that degree work.
I saw there was a festive board with toasts.
Oh my God!
Have we gotten
Shh,
clearance
no,
from
you were
anybody important?
la 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 la.
No, I think it's
la,
fair.
la la la.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jack. In fact, here, let me just mute your microphone. What are you? Channel 1, 2. Okay. It's open to Master Mason in the morning, and you have two great speakers, one of which I don't remember. Second of which is one of the directors of the Academy of Masonic Knowledge. And then there will be a lunch and a festive lunch that is open to anybody Master Mason. And then in the afternoon, if you are AMD, then you can stick around and watch conferral of one or two of the AMD degrees. Does that sound about right?
That's about as close.
That is about correct. Yes, and the degrees, it's kind of not unlike our speaker today. It's Intro to Esoterica 101, and we're going to try to help the brethren see things in a symbolic way so that they can help themselves to dig deeper into the work, so that they can find it for themselves. I told a guy that got his third degree the other day, we're not showing you or giving you the buried treasure, right? We're giving you a shovel and pointing at where you should dig. And you need to dig for yourself.
Like Goonies.
Yeah. All right. You just ruined a perfectly good analogy. Thank you, Jason, for that, because that's what you do.
Hey, you guys.
Goonies was a great.
It's a fantastic movie. I
It
don't know
was
what
very
everyone's talking about.
spiritual. If you really dig deep, it's very yeah. So, Justin, I'll be accepting your chapter petition.
I'll have it to you soon.
Okay. It's online. No worries.
Anyway, I guess that's it.
Well, somebody's got to take us out, like Larry would.
No.
No, yeah.
Justin, make a chicken sound.
Banjo music.
This episode is brought to you by this guy named Hayward.
All right, hang
What's
on,
his
hang
last
on.
name? Jablom. Hey, Jablom.
I would like to thank Justin Troop for filling in for Larry Maris.
Here.
Absolute pleasure.
Pete Maris are wearing a big purple and shiny fez. Jack Harley for enlightening us on things that we couldn't normally be enlightened on. Jason Lewis, our producer, that's me.
He's awesome, that guy.
And absolutely our guest and symbologist, Michelle Snyder. This is Jason Lewis.
Jack Harley.
Justin Troop.
Dash the Doberman.
And Pete Ruggieri. Good night.